Hey, what's up, classic TV fans? My name is Rick 9G. Welcome to the 9G Monster Special. We have been looking at some of the classic Universal monsters. I've already covered Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, the Mummy, and now the Invisible Man. The end of the month of October is quickly coming to a close, so I'm trying to push these out quickly. Let's get right to this video, but I want to say before that if you're wondering why a guy like me would make a video on an almost 90-decade-old film about an invisible man and bloopers that are nearly invisible themselves, well, don't ask me. You're the ones who clicked on the video. So let's just have fun. Let's look at the first blooper. Now, while this is not my favorite film that is of the Universal classic monster films, it is a really unique one, and actually it does have this soft place in my heart because I really did enjoy Claude Rains, his portrayal, and just how he played the Invisible Man. He was so good at it. His voice was commanding as always. And yes, he was in the theater world. He was on stage. And so he was seen only the last part of the movie. So 95% of the film he's not seen. So his voice played a very prominent role. Now, I know a lot of you may be asking, well, how did they make these wonderful effects? Just the effect of him being invisible like that. Well, they draped his face in black velvet, or just this black felt material, and the background as well. So essentially you would only see black. Now let me jump to the scene where he's in the hotel and he's eating, and the woman, Mrs. Hall, comes through the door, surprises him, and he's covering his mouth with the napkin. That is the fact that there's no mouth there. He didn't want to freak her out, but she did get a little bit freaked out. But I'll pause it here and you will notice that instead of seeing the blank space or the space of invisibility, you actually see the black material that is put right on his face. Blooper number 1. I really enjoy peppering these in and jumping around throughout the movie. So let's go back to the beginning of the movie, the first time we see the Invisible Man, and we get an idea of the pub. We see everyone drinking, we see a man on the piano, and we find out that it's in fact a coin-operated piano, and that is very important because the music is playing and we see the Invisible Man come in. He's all wrapped up, of course, and everyone just pauses and looks at him. Even the music pauses, and that would be strange because, again, it is coin operated, and that man who's on the piano is not really playing it. So why would it stop all of a sudden? Maybe there's another Invisible Man in the room who stopped it? Who knows? Now, Claude Rains plays Jack Griffin. Now, that character mentions in the beginning of the movie that he must conceal himself for about an hour after eating. Why? Well, that's so the undigested food that is inside his body gives it time to digest, or else it would be visible. He also mentioned that he can be seen in mist, that is outside weather conditions, mist or fog. But if you use that logic and you really think about it, then we should be able to see the cigarette smoke in his lungs when he is smoking in this scene. But if you clearly look, it is not visible while it's inside his body. I wonder why. Now, there's a point in the film where the Invisible Man notices that the police are coming to the house and they are surrounding it. So he goes to look outside the bedroom. He sees all the police officers out there. He gets a little bit frightened. But notice what is happening in that window. There's this kind of a net curtain, or it's essentially just a curtain that he looks through. But as we essentially zoom in, the net curtain disappears. We can see all of the police officers, and then the next shot, all of a sudden the net curtain is right back on there, and it's like, what happened to it? I guess this must only mean that some invisibility potion was splashed onto the curtain. Now let me know in the comments who else noticed any of these bloopers or maybe didn't, and who was surprised by these when you did learn about them. Now let's talk a little bit about the pub itself. Now, most of this movie is taking place in the United Kingdom, so essentially the British style, the British look, the British accent is present all throughout. But if you look at the pub in Iping, I believe that's how you say it, or Iping, there's an American style dartboard that is used instead of the more elaborate British style dartboard that should have been used. Of course, this all makes sense because this was not filmed in the UK. It was filmed in Universal City on the Universal Studios backlot. I would say that this is probably my favorite blooper from the list. Let me know what you think about it. in this scene where the riot happens at the pub, a technician could be heard, whether it's the director or the cameraman, yelling, "Stay on camera." So essentially directing the actors that, hey, they're leaving the depth of field of what the camera can capture and to stay on camera. Here, listen, I'll play it for you in loop so that you can hear it in the background of all the chaos. Now, I know the film came out in 1933, but I'm sure they had maps back then. I don't know if they're as accurate as the GPS guided ones we have today. But let me mention to you this. The Invisible Man, when he was in London, says that he wanted to go back to the village of Iping, which was only, quote unquote, according to the lines, only 15 miles away. Now, if you look this up, it is not only 15 miles away, it's actually 57 miles away. The only explanation I can think of is they mixed up 15 and 50, and of course, with it being paper maps, they didn't pay too much attention to it, threw the number out, and it just stuck in the film. Now, you can notice the streets of this town, they very much look like a studio set, but they don't really look like England in 1933. They look more like those in an Eastern European style town. Well, that's because a lot of these were reused from the previous films, Frankenstein, Dracula, just from different angles, dressed up a little bit differently. But if you understand the foundations are essentially the same, then you will realize why it looks very similar. Now, the complexities of invisibility are very apparent here in this film. Now, think about this. If an invisible man was really invisible, he would be naked, and then when he would put clothes on or any type of article of clothing on him or herself, you could see the outline, essentially the silhouette or the outline of the individual. Now, when the last scene of the movie comes in, when we see the Invisible Man inside the barn, and he is essentially naked, sleeping amongst the straw, he runs out into the snow, and what they want to do is catch his footprints. But if you really notice, the footprints he leaves in the snow at the end of the film are those of a man wearing shoes. You don't see individual feet, or you don't see the toes, actually. You just see essentially a boot or some type of shoe. And if that were true, you would actually see his shoes invisibly walking around, and everything else would be invisible. So this is a very apparent blooper. Now, the last blooper I have, which is actually 2 in 1. It's 2 bloopers in the exact same scene. It's the bike scene where the Invisible Man gets on the bike and rides it off away from the crowd that is trying to grab him and get him. Notice the track or the rail that the bike is on, which is used to kind of transport it from one side of the screen to the other side. And not only that, essentially that's what's used to keep it guided throughout the scene, but then you see wires and strings that are used to keep the handlebars in motion, kind of like he's pedaling, moving the handlebars back and forth. It's very comical to see, but I mean, how else would they have done it in 1933? But a blooper nonetheless. Well, that's it for this video, classic movie fans. My name is Rick9G. Thank you so much for enjoying the video. If you did enjoy it, it's absolutely free. Make sure to subscribe. It does help out my channel. I want to welcome all the new subscribers. There have been a lot of you recently. Don't forget to also like the video. There will be more coming, hopefully before the month ends. We'll see you next time, and don't forget, be hopeful. Thank you to everyone for their support, especially my Diamond tier patrons. Greg S., Ricky, Sally N., Citizen Kane 359, David D., Kevin K., Vito L., and honorary patron Verbal Volley. If you want to be listed here, make sure to check out the links in the description. Thank you.